What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Game Dev Unchained, the #1 game development podcast about game development and the lifestyle thereof. I am your host, Brandon Pham, and with me, a special guest, Haz Dullull. How you doing, Haz?
You got it right in one go.
Yeah.
Nice one.
There we go. So, awesome. This is part of the podcast where I ask our guests, which is yourself, to introduce yourself to our listeners and viewers out there, who you are, where you've been, where you're at, where you're heading. Just a little short bio before we get started.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Haz Dullull. I'm one of the founders of Hazanimation, a production company that produces animated feature films, episodic series, video games, anything that involves storytelling. Basically, that's what we do. My background originally started in video games. So like back in 98, it kind of shows my age a bit here, but like I started off working in video games like as an intern on like several like racing games, ended up working for a company called Codemasters, more racing games. And the funny thing is I don't even drive a car. So there you go. And then eventually decided to go and work in the movie industry because that's eventually just what I wanted to do. Worked on like movies like, The Dark Knight, Hellboy 2 as a visual effects artist, and then became a VFX supervisor, VFX producer, then made a bunch of short films, ended up making 2 feature films on Netflix, a show on Disney Plus called Fast Lane, and then set up my production company. And now it's kind of weird because I felt like I started off in video games, wanted to leave to make movies, and now the lines have blurred, and now I'm using video game technology to make movies. There you go. That's me.
Well, you definitely been busier than most of us with that extensive, impressive career, right? So I was super excited to talk to you because there has been a couple of convergences that you obviously have been undertaking with your personal career, but also as an industry, we're seeing at first with movies and games kind of sharing tools and knowledge with especially Unreal 5 and beyond. We see The Mandalorian using virtual back sets, and we're seeing more and more shows, Marvel movies themselves adopting virtual sets, right? And then we're obviously seeing that spill over into independent projects, right, in a big way, right? And we're seeing a lot of artists swapping sides, right? Using the same technology, a lot of, teaching the visual effects folks, game tools to leverage, effects tools using their background and knowledge to help game folks kind of catch up to the next high quality standards, right? And then even more interesting enough, Unreal Fortnite, Unreal Editor Fortnite.
UEFN.
Just this thing that they just dropped the last year and a half, right? And I would love to kind of delve deeper into all this with you, right? When did you first started to notice this convergence of moving and games starting to happen?
Yeah.
What were your thoughts?
Back then? Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's so interesting because I remember when I was in games and I tried to get a job in visual effects for film, right? And bear in mind, I was like, at that point, I built a career as a cinematics artist, or should I say FMV artist is what they used to call it back in the day. Yeah. And it was really hard getting a job in the film industry because there's a level of snobbery. Like, the film, right? The film industry goes, oh, you guys make games. Like, it's all low poly and, like 64 by 64 size textures. We're the rock stars. We make movies. Yeah. So I remember going into the movie industry, I had to really pick what I wanted to do. And I became a visual effects compositor because I was able to take photography or my education photography, because I love photography, and CG and put that together, and that's compositing. Was when I worked in games, I was a generalist. I was like, I do lighting, animation, right? Whatever it takes to get stuff into the game, right? On like especially on like PS2 with limited memory and stuff. But now it's so interesting because like even in a company, like we hire a lot of people from like the games industry, like even like Maya artists, Houdini artists, Blender artists. Because the quality threshold on these animated films are exactly the same threshold as video games cinematics. Like, I mean, I remember spending weeks trying to render a sequence, like a water sequence or something, for a movie. And now, like, I'll put on my PlayStation 5 and it's a game done in Unreal Engine 5.2, and it's all in real time. I'm walking around in water, it's splashing and all kinds of things. And I can't even tell the difference between a cinematic and in-game graphics, like, you know, the really high-end ones like Ghost of Tsushima or Call of Duty. So, I mean, that really made me think, oh my God, we're at this point now where, you know, we can use whatever tools. And we have to remember, Unreal is free.
Yeah.
You know, so is Blender, right? So, back in the day when I started off, like, you know, we had to like use versions of 3D Studio Max and acquire it in some interesting ways that we wouldn't do now. Was now we have subscription, but also the tools are free. So, and also knowledge as well. There's so much more knowledge today. Like, thank God for YouTube, right? Yeah. But like when I started off, man, it was forums, or you had to start as an intern somewhere, and the knowledge wasn't shared that much because it was very nichey. And I think like technology like Unreal, and let's not forget Unity as well. Unity played a big part in this as well. But like specifically Unreal, it's really opened the doors for like any creators that have got a great idea and the drive and tenacity to make stuff. There is no excuse. Like, you don't need huge amounts of money to do stuff. Like for me, it was like I had done 2 feature films, like one called The Beyond that ended up going onto Netflix, another one called 2036 Origin Unknown with the lovely Katie Sackhoff. You can see her kicking ass in Mandalorian as Bo-Katan. Did a movie with her, and then I ended up directing a really cool show for Disney Plus called Fast Lane, which I ended up becoming an exec producer on. But then, like, getting ready for the next movie, the pandemic hits, and you're like, oh, you know, that's all live action put on hold. But I was already using Unreal Engine to do pre-visualization, you know, where you're blocking out sequences on the computer to give an idea what it's going to feel like tonally, pacing wise, technical, and all of that. But the previs I was doing, like the quality of the previs wasn't like the quality of the previs I did on The Dark Knight. Like on The Dark Knight, it was grayscale, it's, you know, sometimes T-pose or sometimes animated like this, just to get the point across, right? Because it's like a tech viz as well. So it's usually very rudimentary, kind of crude, right? Whereas the previs I was coming out in Unreal Engine version 4.18, so that's like 2019, 2018, I was using it. It had lighting, reflection, shadows, ray trace. It had all this gorgeous stuff on my MacBook Pro, by the way. So when I'm showing this to studios in Los Angeles or just executives or financiers, yeah, as impressive as the previs was, they were like scratching their head, like, what exactly are we watching here, Haz? Like, you say it's previs, but we've seen previs, and it doesn't look like it. This looks like a animated film, like a first pass animated film or something, or a video game cinematic. And, you know, it's until when the pandemic hit, I remember speaking to my business partner, Paula Prickard. And, you know, Paula comes from a very heavy, like, she's a veteran post-producer, worked on tons of movies. Her last movie was The Expendables 4, which looks really cool. And so she was very much live action, but she's got a love for technology. So I remember telling her, hey, let's make an animated film. I remember her going, we don't have the resources for that. Like, love the enthusiasm, but like, how are we going to make an animated film? And I started showing her some of the stuff we were doing. She's like, wait, what? That's done on your laptop? And that's when both of us like realized, you know, the cogs in our head starts being, hang on, like, if we did this for 90 minutes, and just some context here, like our first movie, The Beyond, which is the first movie that me and Paula first worked on together as producers, it was like my independently financed movie. It's the movie where, again, even more context going back, like when I worked in visual effects, I'd done a bunch of short films. One of them did really well. I got a Vimeo staff pick called Project Kronos. Variety, Hollywood Reporter covered it and they optioned it. It was a time when sci-fi was like, the bubble was big. You know, you had people like Neil Blomkamp's District 9, you had Gareth Edwards' Monsters, you had, you know, Chronicle. So Hollywood were looking for like VFX artists turned directors, and I was in that bubble. It was great. You know, I rode that bubble. It was fantastic. Ended up getting studio deals with Fox and Paramount, writing and stuff. But nothing was getting made. Like, I mean, just the land of Hollywood. Nothing gets made very quickly. Or maybe it was just timing. So I remember they had to renew they went to like renew the option for Project Kronos. So, hey, here's another like X amount of money for, like to renew the option. I'm like, what are we doing? I'm like, I need to make a movie. I'm still working as a visual effects producer. I was working on a show called Poldark at the time. It's like Victorian kind of period drama. So I ended up taking the rights back, amicably and everything. And I said, look, go off and make the movie you want to make. And I ended up making the 90-minute version of what the short was, which was a fake documentary. I remember doing that. And then I was getting ready for my next movie, the one with Katie Sackler, that got greenlit pretty much quick after The Martian came out by Ridley Scott. Because at the time, no one wanted to make movies about Mars until Ridley Scott made The Martian. And Paula came on as a post-producer. And I remember her watching the first couple of movies. She was like, I'd love to give you some notes. I'm like, yeah, sure. And she's like the complete opposite of me. But she's very production heavy, but also very creative as well, which is a very rare thing to find in a producing partner. Because usually producers will like numbers, where she's got a good creative streak. So we gel really well on that. But yeah, flash forward now, we want to make an animated film, all in Unreal. We spoke to Epic, and Epic were really kind to give us an Epic mega grant, 2 mega grants to help us get the film going. But just for the people listening, Epic don't finance movies. So you just can't go in and say, hey, I've got a great script. It's going to be an Oscar winning. You got to finance it. They gave us a mega grant because we were doing something that was not being done at the time. And that was, we were trying to create an animated film, 90 minutes, 4K, with HDR color grading, but done in a very anime-esque style, as opposed to photo, which is, PBR, photo-based rendering, which is what Unreal is based on. We were breaking shaders. We were creating our own anime shaders. We weren't using filters to create the look. We wanted to do it properly. So we got some funding for that. So Epic kind of financed the process, and for us to then share that process to the world, which was an amazing thing to do. But we spent like just over 2 years working on that, a very small team. And again, I'm sure an animated film is like hundreds of people. It's like an army of people, right? If you look at the credits on Spider-Verse, hundreds of people. Whereas on ours, it was like we started off with just me and my head of CG, Andrea Tetechi, who's my longtime collaborator. And then we started bringing other people on, and then became 5. And then like in mid-production, we were like 12, including motion capture artists. I was directing motion capture via Zoom. We had this amazing motion capture artist called Gabriella, and worked with another called Ace Rayoul. A lot of it was remote. And it just shows you that, oh my God, we can just use tools like Unreal Engine, get the support of the community as you're sharing stuff, to make a fully fledged feature film. I mean, it's very violent, the movie, obviously, when you see the trailer, but we made a movie during pandemic and everyone was paid. It's all financed properly. And I think a lot of that is down to embracing technology.
Yeah, I mean, the same things that you're seeing, we're seeing the same side on the game side. What used to take a larger team to do, a smaller team can competitively look very similar. It's hard to kind of differentiate what a solo developer did versus, the gap has been closing with bigger AAA titles with 500 plus people, because the technology and tools are there for us to take advantage. The cool thing is that seeing that, hearing your story about seeing the convergence happening, recognizing, how real time is awesome in terms of workflow. I have a very little experience. I worked at Digital Domain for a little while, right?
Okay.
But it was the very first recognition that, starting to use it for like trailers, because trailers before was the same way. It goes to a visual effects house for games, and they do their treatment. Yeah. And then slowly the in-game cinematics became basically in-game cinematics. Taking a few liberties here and there, but still running in real time with inside the engine versus using other things.
So pre-rendered, yeah.
Yes. So that all that definitely helped push this idea of like, hey, we can achieve quality pretty fast now.
Yeah.
And it's been exciting to kind of see that. And what's more exciting is giving because I'm sure maybe one of the reasons why you left the industry for a while, the stability was a problem. Right. For I think the PlayStation 2, 3 area is like every other studio was closing or something.
That's exactly what happened, dude. I moved up north. I'm a London-based guy, and I end up living in Manchester, right? Because like all the studios are up north, and like the UK was thriving back then with like small developers, and working for a small developer called Virtuacraft. I remember going there, spending like 4 months there, and then I think EA came in and bought a couple of studios, and it was the whole thing that happened. And I was in one of those small studios, got shut down. I'm like, oh my God, it's like with me and my partner's got a house there and everything. So we end up slowly making our way back down to London. It's like stopping by at Codemasters, like, which is like, you know, the middle of the UK, in the Midlands, and working there for a bit, and then end up like going back to London and working for a company called Kuju Entertainment at the time. I think they're called Headstrong Games now. And they did a game called Battalion Wars for Nintendo. I think it was GameCube, if I remember correctly. So I ended up doing that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's gotten a little better, but like what's cool. Yeah. It's gotten way better since then. You know, the birth of the Apple iPhone helped, you know, other industries kind of helped grow the game industry. The movies and effects, this convergence have helped artists be able to migrate to different professions using the same tools. So overall, very beneficial. As an artist, it's the best time to wanting to do something or wanting to work for someone. And no one's really stopping you. So what's super exciting is what I'm starting to see too is, and we can talk more about this, is the Unreal Engine Fortnite. Honestly, man, I didn't know anything much about it. I was like, oh great, yeah, they're starting the modding community again. But like, you know, there's like this, you know, it's one of those things that I myself need to dig, you know, deeper into, and you're the first one that's, you know, talking about it, because, you know, they made an announcement of a lot of ex Riot or ex Blizzard guys are forming a studio specifically for developing
it's a really good. I mean, I was at GDC this year when they did that announcement, and I remember, you know, there was a long queue to get into the Epic sort of like location where this thing was happening. Yeah, but it was like this separate building outside of GDC. Right. And it's like this long, massive queue. So me and a friend of mine said, "Oh, we're just going to join this queue." It was like a good 45-minute wait at least, and we got in there, and you know, Tim Sweeney comes on and talks about the future of like the metaverse and where, you know, Epic's going, which is awesome. And then the minute like they announced and they showed like UEFN, it was like Steve Jobs had come on stage with the new iPhone or something. Like you can't get that from a video. Like I was there, everyone, including myself, were like, holy shit, this is a game changer. Like, you know, like we can create content in Fortnite that already has 500 million plus user base already. So there's an audience base, but our content gets to be seen and played on consoles like the PlayStation 5, the Xbox, the Switch, the Android phones, obviously not the Apple phones. And that everyone, you could see everyone in that room had cogs spinning in their head. Their eyes like, holy shit, we can do stuff. And I remember like speaking to some of the Epic guys at GDC. They're like, man, the minute this thing launched, our server crashed because everyone registered. And I think that really is, you know, true democratization. I mean, Unreal already has democratized creators, like the process of creating something on a commercial level already, right? They've done it with games. They've done it with movies now, with virtual production and animated films. But the whole thing of like, you know, making a game is one thing. Getting your game out to the audience is, as you know, is a whole other battle. And I think UEFN bridges that gap massively.
Yeah. I mean, that whole, I mean, it's a separate, there's so many different like sub industries within the game industry right now that's happening. Yes. And not a lot of conversations between, which is funny. The mobile crowd is completely, it's like going in high school, right? There's different niches that's happening, and like the creator content, you know, the Roblox, the Minecraft, you know, and now UEFN is like this whole different crowd, right? That exists within this realm, and it's exciting. But like I said, I'm getting the delayed effect of what you got from the announcement because I wasn't in that room, right? I see the news, I'm hearing peppering in, and then recently that you know, announcement of a studio formed just for that. I was like, what's going on? I need to look more into this, right? So, it's exciting, like you said. Again, another avenue for creators to do something creative. Always a good thing. Yeah. And I would love to kind of hear your personal experience with that right now. Like,
I mean, I'm going to tell you now, like the announcement was amazing, but to get content made, like, you know, on a professional commercial level that isn't like, respectfully, that isn't like a bunch of kids have made some modded level. Because you got to think, right?
Yeah.
The whole thing, Fortnite has been well known for the fact that its players can create stuff. User-generated content, right? Just like Roblox and so on. And if you look at all the maps on there, they all look the same because they're all created in what you call Fortnite creator mode, which is basically using existing assets and skins and so on to build stuff. And they're fun. They're so much fun to play. And you can see why there's a 500 million plus user base on that. But now, it's opened the doors for creators that can create original content, that can create worlds, whether you're a game designer, environment artist, visual effects artist, filmmaker, and you can create worlds and you're using Unreal already, you can migrate your environment, your assets into UEFN. Now, of course, there are a few restrictions. The big restriction is you cannot change a player character, which kind of makes sense because obviously Epic makes their money on skins and so on, and that's an economy right there. But everything else you can change. The other thing also is you are limited to 400 meg. So you can't just go and throw in hundreds of thousands or millions of polygons in there using like very expensive mega scans in terms of resources to make your thing look gorgeous, because there is a 400 meg limit. And there's a reason why there's a 400 meg limit is so that everyone can download it on their consoles or Switch and play. And, it makes it fair. It's a fair cap for everyone. So there's limitations on that. But, for me, that just felt like going back to my PS2 days where I had to like take a vehicle, have a texture, which is 64 by 64, tile it and make it look really good, running in very limited video memory. And now, Fortnite is still way better than what I had back then on the PS2, but still like 400 meg forces you to optimize yourself. And it just makes me think like when you're making low budget movies, you don't have the big expensive budgets to build a set. You find a location, you make it work in that location, right?
Yeah.
And I think this is what UEFN for me as a creative excites me. And when I bring my team on there, and my team is very small to do a UEFN project, we can focus on the most important thing in a game, which is the gameplay, right? Yeah. Yes, we have the gorgeous environments, but the cool thing is like all of the pains that are usually associated in game development. We're doing a project called Max Beyond at the moment, which is part of the Idea Xbox program. And that's all in Unreal Engine 5.2. And we want to create a combat system. We have to create a combat system. We have to physically create one. We want to create a really cool AI system. You got to build that stuff. Got to figure out your collisions, all of that stuff. And yes, it's easier in Unreal because back in the day, you had to buy middleware tools like Renderware back in the day, which was used on games like Burnout, or you hire some shit hot programmers to code that tools for you. And a lot of your investment in making game development back then was building the tools, building the engine, and saying you got this amazing engine and you can have a slate of games and the publishers investing in the tools and in the engine that your company owns. Same thing in visual effects. A place like Digital Domain, ILM had their own proprietary tools back then to do fur, water, and so on. And now, you can just use those tools in Autodesk, right? But you still have to do a lot of work still in Unreal Engine. Now in UEFN, your physics is sorted, your game mechanics in terms of like, loading the weapons, all that is done for you. All you have to do is be really smart and create a very good experience for the audience. And remember, it's solo gameplay, multiplayer gameplay, the audience base, what they're like, teenagers to 25, 30-year-olds maybe, but also be really smart with how you optimize your levels. Things like world partitioning, right? That's an Unreal Engine 5 thing. That's also now in UEFN. So now you can do world partitioning, which means you can create expansive landscapes, but they load up much quicker, right? As opposed to like doing LODs, the manual way, the level of detail, the very manual way. I remember back in the day, like building 5 versions of the LOD of a car, something. Was now Unreal does that really well, and UEFN does it. So UEFN is like Unreal Engine 5.1 light version, right? So it looks like Unreal, it works like Unreal, but there are certain things they rip out. So like the Niagara particle system, like in Unreal Engine 5, it's extremely complex. It's much more node trees and so on. You try to migrate a particle system from Unreal into UEFN, it's most likely going to break because a lot of things it doesn't recognize. You just have red errors everywhere. So you have to build your particle system from scratch. the big thing also with UEFN is that you can use existing Fortnite assets, and they're all built in a very modular way. And the cool thing is, like, if you want a wall from one of the buildings in one of the epic Fortnite maps, you can use it. You can just drag that wall, and then that's got collision, it's destructible, but you are limited where you can't change a texture. For example, you can change the colors, can't change the textures. So what we end up doing is putting our own logo on a geometry plane and kind of putting it quite close to it so it doesn't flicker or anything.
Yeah.
So you have to think really smart how to do things. We've got cinematics running in our UEFN experience, and you got to figure out, like, how long should that cinematic go for. The other thing also is when you're doing cinematic in Unreal Engine, like a console game, you use something called sequencer, and it's really well managed. In UEFN, everything has to be loaded in the game level, and your sequencer then references that from the game level. Whereas in traditional Unreal Engine, you can drag stuff into sequencer and it lives in sequencer. So that means when your cinematic is running, it's only running the assets that are built into the sequencer, which is the timeline in Unreal. In UEFN, it all loads up. It all loads up. So you got to be really smart, and you really have to think like truly a game developer's making content for speed and efficiency, because you don't want any latency. You don't want people waiting 20 minutes for your map to load. That's a turnoff already. So you have to have all these stuff in your mind. And just like those companies that are now setting up a division for Fortnite, we're starting to do the same, because there's a lot of commercial avenues in there where certain brands may want to have their brands gamified, right? We can do all of that because we come from Unreal and we're game designers. So it's no surprise in hearing other studios setting up a division. I mean, I think it was last month, Nike announced this thing that they did where they created a Nike world inside of Unreal Fortnite, UEFN. Of course, makes perfect sense. So, there's a lot of business avenues. So, we don't, like, as a game developer, as like, sometimes you have to do service work, right? To pay the bills, keep the lights on so that you can keep making the game that you want to make. Was now there's another avenue. We can do branded content. We can create experiences for other movies that want to be shown as part of their marketing launch in Fortnite, and bring all the skills as filmmakers, all the skills as game designers, and do it in a very low resource wise, because it's all in UEFN. We just need good designers, good Unreal Engine artists.
Yeah, you're kind of opening and blowing my mind with this stuff. I mean, a lot, I think, listeners, people who are, how we are, we kind of tunnel vision into the project that we're in. We hear news, we hear updates, it's cool. But like, we haven't done the exercise of thinking past beyond, surface level. And, just you mentioning, like, yeah, there's a lot of brand and corporation service needs right now to kind of put themselves as kind of like, I mean, it's like Ready Player One now, right? Like, there's the people who want like their little bungee jumping virtual space represented in Fortnite, which totally makes sense. I mean, Fortnite was, and it still is, one of the biggest thing ever. Yes. We're seeing, my knowledge is that was like probably what most people have. They do these cross collaborations every season, right? And it's like, oh man, this is how they're building their metaverse. They have the Mandalorian, they have Spider-Man in here. There's a bunch of, I mean, that
is a true metaverse right there, dude. Like, I mean, last year we got involved in a Web3 project. Again, we don't deal with blockchain, crypto. We don't do any of that. We're mainly creatives, and we were asked by this great company, Xmana, to be involved in creating their metaverse world, and we did. We built it all in Unreal. And the interesting thing is, originally they called us up to produce the trailer because they've raised a substantial amount of money based on a pitch deck, but didn't have anything to show, like anything functional. So we did a trailer to kind of visualize Xmana's vision, which is a great vision. It was really great. Like, the people working there, people like Steve Stain and so on, and Randy Middleton, they're like great people. They got a great vision, but didn't really have anything yet. It takes a while to build stuff, especially you're dealing with the metaverse. There's a lot of server infrastructure and so on. So we ended up doing this really cool trailer that kind of shows the vision of what their metaverse will be like, which is an esports company. They came back and go, oh my God, we freaking love this. Can you do 10 more? We're like, we could. It's great business. Like, we can keep making our games. But then question, why would you want 10 more videos? Because, we want to show gamification for retail, gamification for this and that, and just everything to do with gamification, right? I'm like, okay, that makes sense. But like, why, if I understand Web3 is immersive interaction, and so on. Whereas Web 2 is video images and Web 1 is just text, right?
Yeah.
So why are we using Web 2 to pitch Web 3? Why don't you pitch Web 3 in Web 3, which is an interactive piece? They're like, well, how do we do that? I'm like, well, it's funny to say that, because that trailer that you so love, we actually made it all in Unreal Engine. Obviously, it blew their mind. Like, wait, what? You used the game engine, the thing that you used to make Fortnite, to make our trailer that looks like pre-rendered at a RenderMan or something? I'm like, yeah. So what we ended up doing was for like a month or so, we migrated everything that was done in the trailer into a game project, all in Unreal, all in the same thing. It's just a different project setup. Plugged the controller in and shared screen and say, hey, look, here you go. I'm walking around your metaverse. Like, here you go. They're like, oh my, their minds are like, but obviously to me and my colleagues were like, dude, it's just walking around an environment. Like, come on. But they're tech people, like in terms of like Silicon Valley and so on, do Web3, it blew their mind. So we ended up like financing a lot of our company and growing the games division. Like, you gotta remember, like when we set up Hazanimation, me and Paula's intention was to make movies. The pandemic hit, we ended up making animated films. Great. We're still storytellers, still making movies for the, for the streamers, cinema. We never imagined having a games division. And all of a sudden we're working in Web3, which is essentially we're making a big MMO, right? That's essentially what we're doing when we're making these Web3 projects. It's a big, massive MMO. So we have to hire like, server engineers. We have to hire like developers and game developers that understand the world of MMOs and massive worlds, and understanding how to create procedural world building, all of that stuff. And we're like, realize, oh God, we actually have a games company. Then we decided to make our own game. And now all of a sudden, that's a big part of our company, is making video games. And that's because we took the opportunity that was presented to us via Web3 and didn't look at it as like crypto, blockchain. We just looked at it as like, we're making a big MMO. In fact, I told my guys, because obviously I have to pitch this to my team to convince, right? I'm like, guys, we're going to make an MMO. I never once told them, like, they're obviously going to know now, but I never once told them like, we're going to make a Web3 project and it's going to be driven by blockchain technology. And so as amazing as it is, and I still think it's really cool having, that vision, whether it's being executed now, it's a whole different thing. But my guys are not going to be interested in that. And staff retention, retaining your team, it's just another side of a battle of running a production company. Is how do you retain the team? How do you keep them excited? Yes, you can give them loads more money, for sure. But most artists, it's mostly about the projects they want to work on. They want stuff that looks good on their portfolio. They want to learn. They want to grow as artists. And I can't say, hey, working on Web3. So I just told everyone we're making an MMO. They're like, oh my God, that's freaking cool. And it's only later on when the press releases came out, I'm like, oh, it's a Web3 project. Who cares? We had a great fun working on MMO. So a lot of that is, that's how we end up going into the world of games. But in terms of like making an actual console game, remember I mentioned we made our animated feature film, Rift, all in Unreal. Well, there was a sequence in there that involved a car chase. You might see it in the trailers, best car chase. And I'm like, my God, we're animators, but we're not like Pixar level animators, right? To animate a good car with suspension, it's going to take a lot of time, get all the wheels moving, make it feel like there's weight to the car. So what we end up doing is stuck an Xbox controller in, switch it to game mode, and we started just driving a car around just to get an idea what the physics will be like. And then we're like, oh, let's put a camera. Oh, let's record that. Let's bake the frames into sequencer. And we're like, that was fun. Not only did we get a really cool sequence, that was fun. And we're like, let's like block out some time over the weekend and just do like a game jam session. So I didn't know was Sam Rebello, one of our amazing environment artists. He's also sort of like a part-time game dev. So he came on board. And this is a great way of discovering people's skill sets within your team, because not everyone speaks up, right? And he was like, I can probably put together some blueprints to get that working. I'm like, you sure? Like, you do environments, are you sure? He goes, yeah, fine. He did the most amazing work. I mean, just some context. He's our lead game designer now today. And this is the guy that was hired as a junior asset artist. So again, like whether that is down to the amazingness of real-time technology being so accessible, people like myself and Paula are able to like encourage our team to grow, as opposed to like working in a visual effects company. Like when I used to work, it was so compartmentalized that that's your lane, stay in your lane. That's the tools. That's the licenses of your Nuke license, of your Composer, Maya license, or Houdini. That's what you're going to stick with. If you want to go do something else, do it in your own spare time. Whereas using something like Unreal, which is so generalist friendly because, you could be great at lighting, great at particles, but also you can put together a really cool sequence and own that entire sequence if you want, because it's all real time. You're not waiting for things to be rendered on a farm, or you're not waiting to bake stuff into memory to play. It's all real time, right? So we end up like putting together like a little demo, and we put it on Steam, like early access. Now, of course, we all know early access is fantastic, but also there's a lot of trolls on there. So a lot of people were like, oh, it's a great game, but this doesn't work. This sucks. But the point was, we were able to get our game on Steam and get people to play it, and we get QA for free, right? Like, you can't do that of a movie, right? I mean, you can imagine making a movie. Hey, I'm going to test this movie, you guys. And it gets ripped to shreds. That's it. You're done. No one's going to touch a movie. Whereas in games, that whole early access thing was coming new to us. I mean, for me, obviously, the last time I worked in games was a long time ago. There wasn't really early access until like 10 years ago or something. But like Steam really made that happen. It was amazing. But then something really extraordinary happened. Microsoft reached out and said, hey, if you thought about applying to the Microsoft the Idea Xbox program, which is a program that supports independent developers, gives them development kits, gives them engineering support and so on, to allow them to get their game onto the Xbox, hopefully, fingers crossed, onto the Game Pass and so on. And we got in based on that demo. And I remember we're like, yeah, okay, yeah, fine. But dude, like 2 boxes came in, we opened them, and they're Xbox development kits. Mm-hmm. And I came from a world where dev kits were like a luxury to have. The hardest thing back then was to get a PS2 dev kit, let alone try to get a Nintendo dev kit. And now we got Xbox dev kits. So we're like, oh shit, like, I guess we're making a console game. We had all the paperwork signed, everything. And that's, again, I think because of the world of real time, it's so low risk to experiment outside of your lane, to figure out like, hey, what is this like? Whereas, if Unreal had a massive license fee and there was a huge setup cost involved in Unreal, then I don't think myself, Paula, and the team would be making video games today.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, I think there's so many crazy things that's happened the last few years. I mean, just to kind of go back to metaverse is kind of like this weird polluted word now. Like, I know like people who are actually making metaverses, and they're like, no, it's like, what do they call it? They call it something else, like doing everything they can to avoid the word. But the idea of it, right? Everybody's still very open to. They want to do that. They want to be a part of it. And like you said, it's like we've been doing MMOs forever. But it's also interesting to see like people outside the game industry that don't know the nomenclature, the culture, right, are discovering this all at once. We're talking about like 20, 30 years of buildup that we're kind of used to, neural maps and stuff like this, right? And they're like, what is this technology? Where does it come from? And a lot of that is because of, the recent years, we finally caught up in graphical fidelity that, like you said, the snobbiness that I think we've all experienced. I felt it when I was at DG. These visual effects walking in like rock stars. Like, hang on, nerd. All right, we're doing the same stuff, right? But yeah, it's definitely the. I don't think it's 100% cross pollination yet, but I think it's definitely lowered in terms of and height and respect in terms of like, well, there's a lot of things we can teach, each other, and kind of get it to the next level.
I mean, obviously the cross pollination with the teams, right? Like artists can jump between, like, you hire from Ubisoft to come and work on your movie. That person who's worked in movies that's great. But also there's another side as well, which is the producing side, the business side, right? Yes. And like, back then, like we're thinking way back to like the first Mario movie that came out with Bob Hoskins, right? And it wasn't received very well. And video game IP adaptation back then was like frowned upon. Oh god, no, it's cheesy. The Street Fighter came out with Jean-Claude Van Damme, and I kind of enjoyed it, but it didn't do too well in the box office and so on. And then Tomb Raider came in, it kind of did its thing. But now, like, there are studios in the US that are just focused predominantly on acquiring video game IP. I've got some good friends of mine that works for DJ2 Entertainment, and they produce Sonic the Hedgehog. And I remember speaking to them, like, the guy, Dimitri Johnson, who runs it with his business partners. And they're like, yeah, it took a long time to convince studios Hollywood studios to make Sonic the Hedgehog. They had the rights and everything. And now, Mario came out like a few months ago, and that did really well. Right? Exactly. Did really well. Like, Nintendo's sales have jacked right back up as well, which is amazing. And for us, like our next
Last
animated
of Us
movie,
beating Game of Thrones.
Last of Us,
Something crazy's been happening in the last 5 years.
Yeah, and dude, like Last of Us, like episodes were directed by Neil Druckmann, the guy who created Last of Us, right?
Was that? Yeah, I mean, for the longest time, we're talking about Hideo Kojima trying to do MGS, and he's like, all right, you can stay in the writer room, right? But you're nowhere near the set. But now we have like game directors in the chair.
Yes.
It's definitely changed.
Yeah, and he's like, an exec on the show, and he's very much influenced. It's definitely changed. And I think that's where the lines are blurring now. Like, we're going to get to a point where there is not going to be any difference. Like, and that's the thing. Like our next movie got greenlit like 3 months ago, and it's an animated show based on a video game called Mutant Year Zero. And we did the pitch. I remember in 2020, I was getting a lot of coverage for all the stuff I was doing in Unreal. I was doing like shorts and stuff, epic spotlight story, all that great jazz. And the studio or a company in the US called Pathfinder reached out to me. Called Mark Wheeler and Fred Malberg, who now runs a company called Heroic Signatures, and they own IP like Conan the Barbarian, Means of Madness, and tons of great Scandinavian-based IP. And they're like, look, we're looking for directors to pitch on project. They give you live action, TV shows, whatever you want. And they send you a copy of the game. And I remember getting the game Mutant Year Zero, putting it in the PlayStation 4, and it's like Sony PlayStation, and then the next logo comes up, Made in Unreal. I'm like, ooh. What if I rang up the game developers, who are called Bearded Ladies, published by Funcom? What if I call those guys up and say, can you give me all your Unreal Engine assets? Because I want to put together a teaser trailer. I mean, back then you had to like rip clips to create sizzle trailers. You had to invest in very expensive concept art. I'm like, why the hell would I do that? Like, these game developers have spent like 5+ years, creating this amazing world, which is also based on a board game. Why would I go and redesign the characters? I'm like, I want to play in that world to tell a story. So I reached out to them, told them what I was doing. They thought I was nuts. They're like, I don't think you know how game assets work, but there you go. Here's a Google Drive, download it all. And I was a bit naive back then. It's all modular based. So you have to like use scripts to put them together. Not like in visual effects where you just have a complete character and skeleton, skinned and everything. But we did it, and we put together a 3-minute test sequence involving the characters from Mutant Year Zero. Pitched it back to them, and my pitch was like, Guardians of the Galaxy meets Mad Max Fury. It's super fun, action, bunch of misfits trying to find identity in this world, and that kind of thing. And they're like, we love it. You're the director for the show, absolutely. Question: that little test sequence you did in Unreal, what would it be like if we did sort of like a 2.5-minute sizzle teaser trailer? Here's a bit of budget, and we did it during pandemic. It was like anything will fucking be great, and so we took it. And we did it, and IGN ended up releasing the sizzle trailer, which you can watch on IGN on the website, and already it got a lot of traction because it had a big following. The board games had a following, so it's a really interesting way as a producer to test something out by just taking a video game IP, taking game assets, creating something of it, and just testing the market with it. I know Deadpool did a similar thing. When like the guys trying to get Deadpool off the ground, they allegedly leaked the opening sequence or something, and that was fantastic. It encouraged 20th Century Fox to finance the film. So I think gaming, the world of gaming technology and just the world of how games are made is heavily influenced in film, because back then the game studios used to look at films and go, oh, we should make our cutscenes looking like this. We should, our scripts and our dialogue should reference film and reference cinema and all the time. And now I'm seeing a lot of cinema referencing video games. For example, you've seen John Wick 4? You seen the last John Wick movie?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a sequence. If you remember, like it's like it goes completely top down, and you're just and the whole sequence is John Wick blasting these bad guys, going from one room to another, but it's all done top down. Dude, there's a game called Hong Kong Massacre. It's freaking identical. It's identical. And this morning on LinkedIn, one of the visual effects supervisors in the film from Radio FX posted that thing and said, it was heavily influenced by Hotline Miami, I think it was. And I'm like, no, it's clearly Hong Kong Massacre. And he was like, oh my God, yes. So it just shows you how much influence now video games have, like not just creatively, conceptually, but also from a business point of view. Because now, like, Blumhouse, the horror company that do films like Insidious and so on, they've got a video games arm that was announced. Bad Robot, J.J. Abrams' company, got a video game arm. Skydance, and so on. And it's becoming part of the Hollywood entertainment culture now.
Right.
Video games was back in the day, it wasn't.
Right. I mean, it definitely the success is speaking for itself. That's helping push this narrative, right? It's like,
Yes.
I was a part of this bandwagon for a long time. I think the first time, at least in movies, well, there's plenty, right? Obviously, the adaptations for a while, taking it out of game creators' hands and putting it in Hollywood and trying to make that work. Some hits, some misses, not mega hits that we're having now, critically acclaimed that we're having now. It took a while. I think it was the first time when I watched District 9, when he first had the weapon sequence, and I was like, oh, this is Half-Life.
Half-Life, yeah.
But a lot of it is because we're just growing up and into these positions. Everyone's a gamer now, essentially, put in these positions, and we're seeing that influence kind of spreading very naturally in these positions that we never thought we'd be in, right?
100%.
But it's funny, growing up, it was kind of like looked down upon as, we're kind of this nerdy niche thing. But now everybody from the president to the athletes, everyone's playing games. And it's very much part of the culture. Just Fortnite being a big, push into that to make it popular. And
but even parents, but even careers, right? I remember when I told my parents I wanted to work in video games. Yeah. My parents are from an island called Mauritius, but they have very heavily South Asian influence. So it's video games. Are you freaking kidding me? Do you not want a house? Do you not want to live? Right? Yeah. and now, my brother's got kids, and my brother's like, hey, you should play Fortnite. There's good economy there.
It's definitely more respected now for sure. For a while for sure. It's like, it's like telling someone you're dying or something. It's like, no, it's a real legitimate. Now people are making legitimate money. Obviously in video games, well respected. Streamers are making. What was that? $100 million.
Oh God, yeah.
For those 2-year exclusive deals, and that's more than athletes. So every
whole esports as well. There's a whole esports thing.
So every avenue of the industry is blossoming into amazing things. But we're talking about Unreal Fortnite earlier. It is at the beginning. I thought it was bringing modding community back, but I'm starting to see more of beyond that. I was like, I need to start paying attention to this because
it's a whole economy thing as well, right? I think Epic are giving more back to the creators as opposed to taking a huge cut or something. I think something 80-20 or something, favoring creators, which is unheard of. But of course, in order to monetize your content, you still have to go through all of the legal checks and everything. It's I think it took us just over a month for Epic to validate us, make sure our taxes are in the right place, that we're an official company and so on. And I think it's fantastic. I think it's great. And that gave me even more confidence that this is going to work on a commercial level because they're doing all of these checks. We just done a new build today and now we have to upload it to a private server, and Epic are now going to validate it to make sure that there isn't pornography or any hateful stuff in there before it gets officially released. And, the official release of Moonotopia, by the way, is next week on the 28th of July, the official launch. So we have to work our way back and say, okay, you got to be very smart on how much testing you do, multiplayer testing, put it on the server build, test it on the PlayStation. So our play test is hilarious. We have our developers, Ryan Fleming, Sam Rebello, Ernesto, and that's kind of our team, and Miles, who helps out on animation. And we're all testing. One's testing on Switch, one testing on PC, one on Xbox, one on PS5, and it's such a great way of testing. And we don't even need a QA department. We QA ourselves, right? And once you test that, you'll find the PlayStation version, the sky doesn't appear, but the PC one is fine. You're like, oh, so you have to troubleshoot that. And also, just a FYI, UEFN is amazing, but it's also a beta software. Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. It's ongoing development. So things are going to break and things may not make sense when they break. You can't go in and rewrite code or rewrite the engine because it's Fortnite, right? Yeah. So there's a lot of working around to make things happen the way you want it to be. And again, it just reminded me of back in the low budget filmmaking. Oh, we didn't get that location we wanted because we didn't have the money. Okay, let's find another way of getting that shot.
Yeah, there's definitely there's a lot of things that you went over earlier that was very because I always feel like, you know, creatively people are at their best with limitations, right?
Yeah,
I feel
I
like
agree.
things, you know, a lot of impressive things can come out of that.
Yeah.
The industry, at least, you know, for a little while, you know, I think mobile helped a bit, but then suddenly mobile is like these corporations now and not like
I
these
know.
two-man teams. But it started out, you know, there's still restrictions, right? You're talking about, you
Sure.
know, download size being
Yeah.
restricted. You were,
Well, your
yeah,
entire project has to be, the size of your project has to be 400 meg.
exactly.
That includes the upload code, everything.
Yes,
Yeah.
and there's a beauty to that because yeah, I do feel like for a while there was this pending problem of 100 gig downloads to try, you know, Warzone or any game. Everything is 60 gigs downloads now.
I know.
And it's very taxing, obviously, to your hard drive, but also it really does push people away to like trying things. And as a developer, there's this tremendous pressure to fill, you know, to the best quality always, right? And that, you know, adds time, resources, can cause problems, delays, stress, right? And basically a lot of projects don't see the light of day because of that crippling effect, right? But like what you were mentioning with Unreal Fortnite, it allows people to just be creative. Everyone has an equal level field of success, which is great. And it focuses on the gameplay, and you know, if anything, it helps you kind of test and fail fast, so that you don't have to like stick with something that isn't working, which is also another entry level way of a lot of young developers to grow the industry, right? We've been seeing this industry growing, and it helps with, you know, obviously players, but also game developers. And it is a very important step to kind of get like students and people who are scared to entering it now because all the AI stuff to like, hey, you know what? I have an idea.
I was wondering when you're going to bring up AI, man. I was wondering, like, when's it going to bring up? When's it going to bring up?
We've had a lot of conversation AI. It's like the biggest thing. I feel like I have an essence of where you stand with that, you know, being a creative, trying to like get things done, right? And I think it kind of honestly is a direction that's where it's heading. You either get on it or off, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely that, of course. I mean, any creator that says I am not going to look at AI is kind of shooting themselves in the foot, because it's not going to go away, right? It's here. I think the big thing is ethical use of AI is the big thing, and you know, and this is where artists can really, you know, like mature artists that have been in the industry for a long time, and also young artists can really like wear the creative hat, but also wear the ethical hat, which is like, you know, we all know how Midjourney works, right? Midjourney is amazing. I have it on my phone. I use it all the time to come up with like really cool like concept. But I'm not going to put that on a marketplace and sell it for like $100 because like the process on what Midjourney does cleverly, by the way, is going online and ripping all those images and kind of mashing them together. You got something, right? But at the same time, like the thing that I try to remind myself and also remind everyone is the reason we have great stories is because it's that human touch. You know, when you watch Lawrence of Arabia, or you watch a Christopher Nolan movie, or you watch any movie that is so like Schindler's List, right? That is like so emotional, or Pixar's Up, right? Which is a really good example. Like if you don't cry in the opening scene, you're not human kind of vibe, right? Or you don't have a tear. That's a human story told by humans. And I feel like people forget that very easily. And, you know, they also forget, like, you know, if you stay at the end of the credits, there's a lot of people working on stuff. So I think AI is going to help us as a tool, just like Photoshop does, just like Unreal Engine does, but it should not and will not, if we all use it smartly, will take over how creations are made or how stories are told. You know, it's just another tool, and that's how. But unfortunately, there are people that are using AI that haven't had the hardship of being an artist or being a creator or you know, seeing how, or being around people that make stuff. You know, they haven't been around. They just see, oh, great, bunch of prompts. what's the big deal? Why are you raising so much money? Why are they hiring all these people? Just do some text prompts. They have that mentality, and in their mind, they think that's how music is going to be generated. That's how lyrics are going to be written, and that's how scripts are going to be created. And that's how games are going to be made. And it's a scary thought, because what we do as game developers, storytellers, filmmakers, when we're doing a podcast like what we're doing right now, is we're hoping that we're going to inspire people, inspire the next generation of creators. And if they're going to be bombarded with like, hey, don't learn Unreal, or don't even think about art, man, you just type that stuff up and it generates it for you. What's our industry going to be like?
Yeah. I just think we're just gonna go. What was it? Idiocracy. That's like people are. I'm with you. Like I think we're pretty much aligned with there. The funny thing is, like, who are these people who are fine with making, going to the make art button and feeling no remorse for it? Funny enough, those are the people who are like investing in projects in the consumer. I mean, that's a lot of people, there's a lot of people that feel this way. And, there's very little niche group of creators that we're going to have to leverage these tools somehow and make people feel and inspired, like you said. The funny thing is, we're seeing that with, I was listening to, AI music being like what's popping right now on YouTube, and then they had Frank Sinatra doing Gangster Paradise, right?
Yeah, I heard that. Yeah,
right. And of course, it was obviously missing the inflection point. Frank Sinatra with the pauses, but and people were like jumping on it. I was like, guys, you're making fun of like, and this is my feeling with AI art and criticism of it, right? You guys are making fun of an infant right now. You're making fun of a 6-month, 1-year-old. Imagine when this matures 10 years from now. Like the potential of this is just gonna get crazy. Like I am so impressed how ready it was day one.
Yeah,
because as creators, as anybody that have put in the work from day one and seeing all the way to year 10, having any type of career, anybody with that insight can see, 10 years down the line, what is this? What does this mean? Right. Yeah. But I do understand and still see, obviously, value of people that have ideas to implement and use these things to tell a story. I mean, in the end, it's forcing creatives to be more creative. All right. How do you face competition when literally, like Unreal Fortnite, the tools put you at the same level? All right. Yeah. And my concern is, yes, the ethical, the same way that Blizzard is I feel like they're ethically using it. They're training on their own stuff that they own, right?
Yes, their own data sets.
That's their own data set to kind of come up with very fast, because the technology is useful. Yeah. All right.
Which is what we're doing. We're creating our own data sets, and we're using Amazon Web Server for that. And, and I feel good about it, because every input that I'm putting in, every output, like we can get mashups of stuff that I would never thought of. Like, and we're getting older, so we get slower, right? So we do need AI to help us speed things up, but use your own content. That's what I say.
Yeah. And so what I don't agree with is people who like, no, this technology is trash. We should that's never going to happen. Right. Exactly. It's like, basically we had this conversation many times. I mean, we're complaining about outsourcers years ago, right? I'm like, it should always be in our country right next to us. It's like, come on, man. It's happening, dude. It's happening. It's happening to the point where China's using us as outsourcing. You know how many times, as a service provider, like Chinese companies are like, hey, we can't get this done. Can you guys get it done? It's like, whoa, what is going on?
Hey man, look, Tencent, Tencent's one of the biggest Chinese companies, and they own parts of Epic. They own like Legendary, Warner Brothers. I mean, we're technically working for them.
Yeah, exactly. So like, dude, look what's going on, right? And at the end of the day, you're just gonna have to get better at being knowledgeable about things and having something to say. I mean, just
adapt. You just gotta have to adapt. Like, look, if we can imagine like what it was like back in like, I know, the early 90s when people were saying, hey, we're not going to be reading newspapers and magazines anymore. We're not going to be watching stuff on the TV every week. We're going to be watching content on our phones, and we're going to be reading websites which has the latest news. People are like, don't be stupid. That's ridiculous. Yeah. The press industry are like, don't be ridiculous. That's stupid. And now every magazine, every press whether it's the Guardian or the Insider and so on, have a news present online. And I think AI is going to be like that as well, where everyone at the moment is like, oh, that's fucking ridiculous. Or the ones go, oh, that's cool. That will be shortcuts. We don't need to hire people. We can do all that stuff. And people are going to abuse it, right? Just like when, the first video that came out on the internet was a porn video, right? And that kind of revolutionized video compression technology. I'm just going to say it did. But it had to be something that was like taboo and like, whoa. And I think AI is that as well. Like there's so much good stuff you can do with it. But of course, the first thing that's going to come out is going to be people like trying to use it for other stuff, like whether it's malicious or whether it's like, an executive thinking, oh, I don't need to hire people. I can do this with one person and a really great AI model. So, I think but the good thing is we have the power of the internet now. People are voicing ethical things. I don't know if you saw about ArtStation, right? This was like early this year where that, people are banning. And, a very good friend of mine, Alvaro Garcia, he's like a really heavy voice about, AI. And he's a game developer. So of course he uses AI every day to do NPCs and mechanics. But even he's very heavy voice about that. And but no, I do not want to be supporting AI generated images. I want to support artists that have blood, sweat, and tears to make that image that has so much emotion and so on. So, and that's because we live in a world of the internet. We live in a world of social media where people can voice this stuff. Whereas imagine if AI, Gen AI came out in like mid 90s and we didn't really have all this access to like people's voices on Twitter and so on. We're like, oh, okay, I guess that's creative now. So I think we have a lot to thank for today.
I mean, it's all, we're having conversations, which is the most
we're having conversations. Yes.
Yeah. And I think through this conversation, we're going to find a solution that is law abiding, that works, that is going to hold people accountable, that are trying to make, there's always people trying to look for the next gold rush, name the last 3 years. There's a new thing every year that people are like trying to make it quick. Yeah, I know, right? NFT, there's a quick buck that, those people are just in and out, right? So what's lasting are like, us having this conversation, what we do with this now. And I think that's happening. Yeah.
You've seen the meme, right? Online, the meme showing like a bunch of traffic, motorway traffic. And it's like, this is all the crypto guys. And it's slowly moving to the different lane. This is the AI. It's brilliant. It's going around.
But it is funny the last 3 years. And, Metaverse was thrown into that too, as part of that mix. It's like suddenly everybody. The funny thing is NFT would have fixed the AI thing right now. That's the funny thing.
That's a good point.
Yeah. But suddenly, 1 year later, it doesn't matter. AI is free for everybody. It's like anything digital is cool. It's like, well, okay. Cool. Well, we hit that hour mark.
My God, that went fast, man.
Went super fast. Hopefully that was a good thing. But I do want to say this is the part where I shut up and hand the mic over to you to kind of share with the good people how they connect with you, how to find you, find more info, point them in whatever direction.
Well, first up, Brandon, thanks for get me on this show. Like I said earlier on, I'm a huge fan of your show in a way. So for me, it's like a fucking honor to be here talking to you about this stuff, like just having a chat. If people want to find the stuff that Hazanimation does, like me and my team do, you can go to hazanimation.com. So it's H-A-Z. So I say Z for the Americans and Z for the English. Hazimation, hazanimation.com. And you'll see some of the stuff we're doing. I post a lot on Instagram. I'm a big fan of sharing behind the scenes. It's the perks of being a producer. You can. So you can find me on Haz Dullull. It's Hazdazzle. I did not come up with the name, and that's another podcast on how I got that name. And on LinkedIn. Like, anyone that's in the industry or not in the industry wants to connect to me professionally. I'm on LinkedIn as you can find me as Haz Dullull, H-A-Z, Dulull, D-U-L-U-L-L. And just feel free to connect with me. I love seeing what other people are doing. So if you're a filmmaker, a game developer, I want to see what you guys are doing. And lastly, keep an eye out for our Unreal Engine Fortnite game, Moontopia, which is based on an original IP that we developed. Originally, it was a TV show. We paused it because we ended up working on other projects. And then when UEFN came out, we're like, what can we do in UEFN? We don't have time to create original IP from the ground up, but we spent a year working on this animated TV show called Moontopia, which is about a bunch of space tourists that crash on the moon and they have to make their way back to another spaceship because there's a monster. So we're like, this would be a great Fortnite game, especially multiplayer. So we migrated all our Unreal Engine assets and they're spent about since April, May, June, July, so that 3.5 months working on this, and it comes out on July the 28th. So look out on LinkedIn, Instagram. We're going to be doing a lot of posts, promoting it, and it's free to play. Look out for the island code, and I just want to get your feedback. So yeah.
Well, perfect, man. All links in description, everything you talk about will be where you're, normally will find them in the episode. Again, man, very inspiring stuff. Thanks for coming on and educating us, keeping us, giving us some insight on your pioneering, escapades here. It's really cool, man. It's really cool to kind of hear like these different avenues. It's one of the reasons why I constantly want to talk to people, try to be everywhere at once, but not really. But this is super inspiring. It was really awesome. And I'm loving hearing the convergence every day. We're all the same, and we don't have to hide anymore. Right? We're actually kind of cool now.
Yes.
But thank you for coming on the show, and
thank you.
See you guys next week.
Bye.
Hello, everybody. Brandon here. I want to talk to you today about something very special. We've been on this wild ride together, haven't we? From my early days as a senior employee, feeling a bit lost, all the way to leading multiple studios, transitioning to smaller indie teams and to the mobile industry, and now running my own game studio for the last 6 years. Throughout this time, you've been here listening and learning along with me, sharing this never-ending journey of discovery. This year, I'm kind of on this quest of meeting serial studio founders, discussing acquisitions, or exploring what it takes to grow a studio to over 100 developers. I've always tried to find an exciting topic to delve into, and every year is a little different. The focus is a little different because that's where I am in my career currently, and I want to be able to share what I'm learning with you guys. So I've always been dedicated to asking the tough questions, bringing you insightful answers from industry leaders and experts. And now I want to share with you how I'm applying these answers to my own journey. This is why I'm excited to announce that for just $1.99 per month, you can now subscribe to our exclusive content series. These bonus episodes will give you a deeper look into my personal experiences and how I'm putting into practice what our esteemed guests are preaching. It's more of a personal side of the journey that I hope will show you that we're all in this together and we're all continuously learning. Whether you're a game developer, studio founder, or just a passionate gamer, there's something in it for everyone. By subscribing, not only will you gain access to this exclusive content, but you also be supporting the ongoing production of the regular programming. It helps keeps the lights on and ensures that I can continue bringing you top quality content and insight into the world of game development. The links to subscribe are in the description. Your support means the world to me and helps me keep doing what I love, sharing this journey with you. So show some love, hit that subscribe button, and let's continue this adventure together. Thank you all for your continued support. And as always, stay tuned for more exciting content. Until next time, this is Brandon, signing off.